You think about those things. I think the one thing I'll say is, that with this group in particular, you asked them about the inconsistencies. I think, the one thing is, it was a group that we put together with the hopes of being able to work through those things, work through that development, to try to be able to develop, on the job, so to speak. And, I think that's where the inconsistencies were, because even some of our older guys that came to play hadn't played a ton at their other places. So, we knew it was going to be a learning club. But we thought we had a group that could kind of push through that, but that didn't happen the way we wanted to. But yeah, Mike, I think about, as you think about it, you always think about, when the season's over with, about your future, no different than last year. So, we'll, I'll have more thoughts again, like I always do. Right when the game's over with, it's a lot of emotions, it's a lot of feelings. So, that's what, we'll do. I'll continue to do, as we move forward.
Yeah, Adrian, before the season started, you said you were going to build sort of your team up with JJ and Donnie. And did you or maybe overestimate a little bit about how good they would be this year and how much they could help you? I'm curious about what your thoughts are about their performance this season.
I thought, Donnie coming back, JJ, returning as a senior year, I thought that would be a good, building block and foundation to have some people that have been here that kind of understand it. But the one thing, you don't know how the development will go. In Donnie's situation, he only played 13 or 14 games. So he was excited to get back, but he was still technically like a freshman. I think he really just, exceeded the freshman season amount of games being played. So he had to learn on the job, and then he had an injury, which, kind of set him back as well. So, and going into the season, you don't kind of, expect those things, and I thought JJ, for the most part, a lot of the stuff that he did for the most of the year was really more of him growing himself and being a complete player. And I know everyone in Syracuse was, used to him, putting up big numbers, but I thought he, grew as a complete player this year, and that was the challenge. And we knew that the numbers would go down because of the players that we were bringing in. And, I think, especially towards the end, players go through those types of slumps. Unfortunately, it happened at the end of the season. But, overall, I thought JJ grew on both sides of the floor, which, we were preaching. And, I give him a lot of credit, and I thank him for, trusting in that and trying to actually go out and do it.
Front left.
Adrian, you and I spoke years ago about your desire to be a head coach, even though it hasn't gone necessarily how you wanted it to go these 3 years. What do you reflect on? What have you learned about yourself and the standard of Syracuse that you've talked about a lot?
Well, when I when I took this job, and I was obviously I went here, and I know the expectations that this job comes with. I was a player and part of it, and every day, that was what I tried to do, and honoring that, with my players, with my staff, the way I coached, the thing about what I've learned is that it's a lot of different variables that in today's world that to get to that standard again that you just can't overlook. It's just a reality. So I think that's the one thing that I learned. The landscape of college athletics has changed, and to be where we want our standard to be, a lot of those things change, and I think that was the struggle. For me to try to adapt to that, and I think you got to have it. To be able to, compete nationally. It's different now, to be able to be relevant, top 25 and compete for tournaments and be in championships. The investment has to be there from top to bottom, and there's no way around it. And I think that was, me trying to keep up pace and us trying to keep up pace in that arena. But still, I don't shy away from, the job that I did. I'm harder on myself than anybody, and, I didn't get the results that we wanted. So I don't shy away from coaching, but, things are just different now. And I think that's the one thing I learned the most while in these first 3 years about, trying to get the program back to the expectations and the standards.
Second row.
Hey, Adrian, Steve Reed from the AP. First off, do you know of any, are you supposed to meet with anybody? Do you know if there's any plans in the immediate future?
Well,
and then follow up quick.
Yeah, we'll have all our meetings tomorrow.
Okay.
So,
As you were talking about looking back, I mean, is there anything that you 3 years in, you look back and say, I wish I had done differently, or what maybe you learned that you would do differently again?
I don't know if we have enough time for that, but no. Again, I think the biggest thing is the amount of work and the amount of so many good programs and so many good teams, but the amount of work that you really have to every day put in, with your staff, with your staff, and trying to really articulate, the vision, the culture, really hammering that in every day. I think that's the one thing that, you hear about it, you got to do it, but to really actually do it every day. And I think that's the one thing that sticks out.
Far left.
David Upman with The Athletic. You mentioned working through that development. Why do you feel like it didn't play out the way that you had hoped? And also, what do you expect about your future at Syracuse?
Well, again, it's a lot of things that, not a lot of things, but it's things that you typically, we were starting from a different place. When I took the job, obviously following behind Coach, that was, those were big shoes to fill. And, like I said before, being able to, have continuity, I think that impacts, not being able to have continuity, with the things that happen. But, you just, with every team, every team is different. And obviously you have your idea of how you think that team and how you want that team to perform, but every team has its flaws, every team has its struggles, and I think every coach has to adapt to that as you go through the year. And I thought we tried to, adapt it to the best as possible. And I think, that's what you have to do as a coach, is try to adapt to your talent, and we tried that.
Take two more questions, second row. Third row.
Coach, down here. Jim Boeheim is here today. If you are to speak to him afterwards, what will you talk about? And then before this game, what have you talked about leading up to this point? What has he been telling you?
I have not talked to Coach. I'm sure, if I talk to Coach, he would say we got to rebound the ball better in the zone and find the shooters, right? Coach has been a great mentor for me as a coach and as a man, and I think our conversations have always been about him trying to give me different things to look at, different things to worry about, different things not to worry about, ignore different things, but he's just been a mentor and guiding me in as being a first-time coach and going through the process, and obviously the expectations at Syracuse because he had been here for so long. Whenever he did talk to me, it was really more advice about how to handle different things in different situations.
Last question, second row.
Yeah, Adrian, you'd mentioned in Syracuse in the last press conference and this one too about variables that have happened over the last couple of years that you thought you could have handled better. Can you be a little more specific about what those variables might be?
I think to be able to, it's not an excuse, and it's just the reality. Again, I own up to everything, but to be able to operate and to be able to do things, the NIL is a real thing. The transfer portal is a real thing. Those are the variables that I was referring to. Those are always going to be challenging, and again, if you fall a little short in those things, it makes it that much more difficult to be able to have the consistency that you want to have. And, those variables, they matter, where in the old model, they didn't matter. They matter now, how you operate, how your budget for recruiting, retention, being able to, help your coaches, develop your coaches, the growing staffs, being able to have, all of those things matter now. And, I think, those are the variables that I talk about that, probably before I took the job, I probably didn't put that much emphasis into it. But now, sitting here, and especially in the last 3 years, the way it has progressed, I don't know if anyone knew it was going to progress to this extent. And so anybody that says, "Oh, what do you mean?" Yeah, we knew it, but to this extent, and just being able to talk to my peers and other people in the business, I think that's the biggest thing.
Okay, thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
All right, there you have it. You just heard from Syracuse head coach Adrian Autry live. And before we progress here on Orange Overtime, we'll pause for station identification.
This is Dave Pash, SU class of 1994, and you're listening to the future broadcasters of tomorrow today on 88.3 FM, WAER Syracuse, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
So once again, you just heard from Syracuse head coach Adrian Autry live after the game. A massive thanks, by the way, to the folks behind the scenes here in Charlotte that gave us the opportunity to air that on WAER. I don't know if that's really ever been done. We just got to listen to what was potentially Adrian Autry's final ever press conference. You heard it there. He'll have meetings tomorrow, and a decision on what his future has in store, you have to imagine, will be decided sooner rather than later. 86-69. SMU ends Syracuse's season here in Charlotte in the first round of the ACC tournament. All right, that puts a wrap here on Orange Overtime. I've been your host, Sam Reese. Unfortunately, there are no more basketball games to cover, but our next broadcast will be lacrosse. It's still lacrosse season, and that's in a couple of days. They're out west in Colorado. Thursday, 10th ranked Syracuse takes on Air Force on the road. That'll be a 5 o'clock Eastern start, meaning McClurg Remodeling countdown to face-off is at 4:30. We have the double overtime coming up here on WAER up until 8:30 with our hosts Jish Sokolsky and Nico Horning. I won't be talking much longer because I know those two have a lot to say and react to what we heard live from Adrian Autry and what was a very disappointing second half for Syracuse to ultimately end its season at the hands of SMU. But before I say goodbye, a lot of thank yous to hand out here, and you don't really realize it's over until it's over. So a massive shout out to the senior class as well here on the WAER sports staff. It's been an absolute blast getting to be a part of this. I suppose this is my final time here on a WAER broadcast. I'll get to spend one more morning with John Smith for morning updates in a couple of weeks. I suppose that'll be my official sign-off, but I'm just a small part of a big equation here at WAER and what makes the station so special. We just covered our 32nd basketball game, 34 if you count the two exhibitions, and while the team, yes, underwhelmed, boy, did our sports staff and desk members do a phenomenal job across football as well and lacrosse season in progress, making this all possible and bringing you excellent coverage. It really has been an honor being a part of this station. A massive thank you to our producer, Josh Richardson, our engineer, Jish Sokolsky, on radio replay, Cadence Kilhoff, in the entire WAER sports desk. The average college student goes off to somewhere nice and warm for spring break, but we had plenty of people back in studio helping us out, making this possible, and that was the case throughout the season. So a big shout out to Josh, Jish. We also have Jared Valentin back in studio, Nico Horning, and Jish Sokolsky coming up on the double overtime. Cadence, as I mentioned, on radio replay. And you wouldn't know it, but there were people on WAER Sports Desk from overseas that are currently on spring break, but took a few hours of their time to help out and make this broadcast possible. So we really appreciate it throughout the entirety of the season. It's been an absolute blast, and again, our coverage continues up until 8:30 here on WAER with Jish Sokolsky and Nico Horning to wrap up shop on the season on the double overtime. So for that, I'll toss it back up north to Syracuse, New York. Jish and Nico, disappointing way to end the season, and I'm excited to have you guys at least finish off our coverage of another season here on the original home.
Yeah, Sam, take that headset off a little extra slow. Great work today. Great work all season. Great work all 4 years. Congratulations on a fantastic WAER career. It almost sounded like Sam was eulogizing there for a second, right after Adrian Autry eulogized this Syracuse basketball season. Now, I don't know about you, Nico, but if you're tuning into our Twitter stream right now, you'll see I'm wearing black, because I think anybody with a brain could have anticipated that Syracuse was not going to win this game, but now it just remains to be seen. Was that Adrian Autry's final game? We're going to talk about it regardless here on the double overtime.
The Orange gave their best shot in the first half, really had a terrible second half, and came up very short. And, of course, the Autry decision coming up and what the future holds for Syracuse from top to bottom. We'll break it all down.
There's a lot of emotions in the air. You'll hear from Nico and myself, and hopefully from you, the caller. The phone lines are open today. You can call in 315-443-2011. But you'll also hear from our reporter down there. Andrew Delapiana was down in Charlotte as well, sitting courtside too. He had the first-hand scoop of everything that happened. We're going to talk about all of this until 8:30 on the double overtime. One final time for basketball season, which starts right now.
The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the double overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
Carlos kicks out. Freeman contested the three. It doesn't matter. It swirls home. The horn sounds, and Donnie Freeman sends this team into the locker room jumping for joy.
Starling from the right wing gets down the lane. His righty layup goes, and the Orange lead.
Calling all the way for it. Wants it on Suarez. Spins back to his right. Baby hook. Up. And it goes. And one. Eddie Lampkin rocks the baby around the three-point line.
And the lows.
100 matchups between Georgetown and Syracuse. A long 95-year history. The rivalry is alive and well. And today, the victors is Georgetown.
Low. Slices through the defense. Behind the back pass. Corhen sticks it up and in. A little razzle-dazzle from Jalen Lowe to Cam Corhen. And that one may be the dagger.
And thus ends the second season under Adrian Autry. And it finishes in the second round of the ACC tournament in 2025.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
But it just makes you wonder what is going on in practice, because each time that Adrian Autry takes the podium, it's a lot of, we're working on it.
We're getting better.
We're working on it. We're getting better. We're getting better. Well, sure, maybe in theory they're getting better.
They are, but
this is a fan base that needs you to be good now.
Say this about Syracuse basketball is crazy, because the brand of Syracuse basketball that I grew up knowing is so far distant from where this team is at now. But I mean, we could be talking about Syracuse at the bottom of the ACC.
I don't think this team makes the ACC tournament at this rate.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011. Or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the double overtime, and it starts right now.
Basketball season in 2025-26. Alongside Nico Horning, I'm Jish Sokolsky, breaking down what could be the end of the road for Adrian Autry. SMU beat Syracuse 86-69, and we want to know your thoughts on everything. We're going to take a big step back and look at the full big picture of this Syracuse season as SMU just ended it 86-69. Our phone number to call in and join the conversation, 315-443-2011. Again, that's 315-443-2011. 444-2011. Tell us your favorite Autry memory, your least favorite Autry memory. Tell us anything you want about this putrid game in which Syracuse gave up 47 second-half points. If you don't want to call in, you can interact with us on social media. At WAER Sports Talk is the @ to find on X and on YouTube, where we have our live stream going. You can drop comments in the chat as your heart desires, because there is a lot to say, but also not a lot new to say, Nico. I think I want to start with Adrian Autry's press conference that we just heard over the airwaves. The big thing that stuck out to me was how he kind of was framing this as it's a new world of college basketball. The NIL and the transfer portal, I will admit, yes, it has screwed Syracuse over a lot in the short time that Adrian Autry's been here, but you can only play with the cards you're dealt, and I think Syracuse did a great job in the transfer portal this past offseason. The results just weren't there.
There's two ways to look at this. Number one is we'll kind of take the NIL part of things right now, and Autry referred to, a lot of factors as to why things didn't fully pan out. I think they had a fine transfer portal grabs as far as the players.
Yeah.
Could be better, and I think that's where he's sort of referring is, they were fine, but he still felt they were missing some pieces that could have helped them, especially in conference play. And so I think that's one area that he was feeling that he fell short on. And then the other area was, the fact that you saw some of the body language early on of the players, and it kind of told you. I don't know if there was a separation between the coaching staff and the players from time to time, but it didn't seem like everything was clicking all the time. I mean, you look at what J.J. Starling did down the stretch, and things just fell a little bit short.
Well, it might have been Adrian Autry's final game, and that's a big reason why he was very melancholy. We have Stuart on the line who wants to talk about who his replacement might be. What are your ideas here, Stuart?
BC affiliate in Syracuse broadcast in their sports section the failure of the Syracuse basketball season. And then the next story was the success of the Siena basketball team under McNamara as coach with a big turnaround. I don't know if he'd be the number one choice, but he'd certainly get a lot of enthusiasm. And then you could have Carmelo be an assistant voluntary coach.
That would be interesting. But, Stuart, I got to ask, because there is a lot of people who are just kind of done with the Boeheim tree. They don't want to see anybody else who coached under Jim Boeheim kind of come back. They want a fresh reset. What is your kind of opinion on that kind of that point of view, I'd say?
Well, they're going to have to pay an awful lot of money.
That is true. That's true.
I think that's
and that's got to come in addition to the money they got to pay for good players who are going to be really not interested in this program.
Right, and I think Nico is trying to say this too. It's a lot of money that Syracuse, in theory, has. I mean, with the new chancellor, the new athletic director, I think that Syracuse might have a little bit more money to shell out. So I don't think that Syracuse should really hamper itself. It shouldn't necessarily say we're going to just pick the low-hanging fruit from across the state. But I don't know. I think that GMAC could be a good selection. He's got the Syracuse ties, but I think people are just kind of fatigued with how Autry handled this whole situation that they kind of want a fresh start. So it's an interesting thought. We thank you for the call, especially having Mello on the coaching staff. That could be definitely interesting. That was Stuart. If you want to join the conversation just as Stuart did, please feel free to call in 315-443-2011. And
well, real quick, I mean, we can talk about that more, but to me, it's up to the higher ups of whether you want to go in or you want to go out of Syracuse, right? Because you have Adrian Autry, former player, GMAC, former player. I think at some point with the changing landscape of everything, you have to try and go out of Syracuse and see what else is out there, because there's plenty of opportunities and other people outside of Syracuse that you can hire. And so I think that's a huge important part going the rest of the way.
Absolutely. I think that Syracuse, I'm of the opinion Syracuse should look outside of Syracuse, of the Boeheim coaching tree, just because I think fans have had enough of it at that point. So the fact that, that GMAC is definitely in the running, I mean, I wouldn't hate it, but I think that you're leaving some on the table there, some meat on the bone for what Syracuse needs. Syracuse needs to get back to where it was, because this is definitively, I feel like I can say this without a shadow of a doubt, the low point in the last half century. There's been no other era of Syracuse basketball that's been this rough. Syracuse hasn't missed the tournament for 5 straight seasons, and God knows how long.
Well, you have the worst loss ever against Duke. That's
Right.
the first thing. And then the second part is looking at the longer string, which is the last few years that you highlighted. And many thought it might be broken this year. Obviously, that was way short of happening.
Right.
And so there we are.
All right. Well, we have another caller on the line, Keith from Cazenovia, loyal caller to the show, coming back in for one final time to talk about some Syracuse men's basketball. Keith, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, man. Hey, first, before I start, I just want to say to you guys, thanks a lot for you guys covering the season and your job. You had your work cut out for you guys this year with this team. It was putrid this season.
To say
But
the
thanks
least.
for all the work that you guys did. But I got to say, I was thinking about this after watching this game. Season on the line, right? And what's our strategy coming out of the gate? To just chuck up three-pointers, right? And we are not a good three-point shooting team this season, right, statistically. And sometimes we get lucky, sometimes we don't. But the strategy for the season on the line is to just chuck up three-pointers. And amazingly, SMU was doing the same thing and missing a lot of shots too. If we had just had a game plan, putting the ball into the paint, passing the ball around, getting easy looks, we could have actually put up some serious numbers on those guys because they were missing a lot of three-point shots themselves. But I'm not really sure why anyone thought that shooting threes was going to be the answer, but it was just frustrating to watch.
And that's a great point because, you look at the splits. Only Betsy had 5, Kings had 3, and then the rest of the team had 1 3-point made. But really, I think, who cares at this point, right? Right, Keith? Did you really think that even if Syracuse came out with the perfect game plan against SMU, that the season really progressed? Because they got Louisville next, and we know what happened last time they played Louisville. So I say why not just let the kids go out there one last time and have their fun? I'm not putting a ton of stock into this game because it kind of just felt like the last little whimper on what's been a stain of a season on Syracuse's resume. So, sure, let them go out and shoot threes. I don't really care that much at the end of the day.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it pains me to say this as a long, long time Syracuse fan, but I didn't think we were going to get past this game realistically. And even if we did, who the heck thinks that we're going to get past the next team and make a run in this tournament? We just weren't going to, right? But at the end of the day, I would have thought that they would have come out and played with some fire and at least made a game of it or come out with something to foster success, right? But this game was kind of an encapsulation of the season in a lot of ways because, we come out, we shoot some threes, we miss a whole lot of stuff. We don't really share the ball around. I don't know what the assist totals were at the end of the day. Then we come out in the second half, we're only down by 1, and then we get steamrollered, right? And it was just kind of encapsulated the whole season. And I didn't expect anything differently, to be honest with you. But I guess, good riddance. The pain is over for this season, I guess, right? And let's move on.
The second half was the total difference in this game. You mentioned it, down by 1, and you gave yourselves an opportunity, and then you shoot 3 for 15 from the three-point line. You brought up those three-pointers. Why is Nathan George shooting 9 threes?
And missing all of them.
Exactly. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and if you see that that's happening, where's the adjustment? Clearly they weren't falling. So if you see that the threes aren't falling, can we move the ball, have some ball movement instead of just passing it around the perimeter and chucking up a three-point shot, trying to get it inside or inside out or cutting to the hoop or anything, right? But if the threes aren't falling, that's a good indicator that you need to try something else. And we didn't. Right. And I guess, at the end of the day, we'll all find out soon enough what Autry's fate's going to be and who the new AD is going to be and all that jazz. But this was just more of the same of what we've seen. And we went 3-12, I think it is, in the last 15 games.
Yeah,
and God, who would have thought? When we started out the season, at one point we were 12-5, I think it was.
And
even if we had gone 800 basketball, we would have had a decent season.
Absolutely, Keith. It's been a pleasure talking to you all season. Thank you so much for this call. Any last words you want to say before we let you go here?
No, nothing much. Just, again, thank you guys for doing the work that you do, and hopefully we'll have something to look forward to and an identity to look forward to, hopefully, for Syracuse basketball and a plan. And I guess we're going to find out.
All right, Keith. Thank you so much. That was Keith from Casanova. You might have heard him all season long if you've listened to our double overtimes, a long-time caller and supporter of the program. If you want to be just like Keith and have us remember you on the air, 315-443-2011 is the number to make an impression. It's not too late, even though it is the final game of the season. Keith was bringing up the assist numbers. The exact number was 16. Syracuse, that's their most since the Wake Forest game. And that ties the Wake Forest game, 16 in that one as well. But before that, the last time they had more than that was February 11th, which, if you're looking at your calendar, was just about a month ago even against California. And that was a game that went to double overtime. So it took them 2 extra periods to get over 16. Nate George had 11 of them. But I think, to me, really, that's a product of the team not practicing the day before. And that's why I guess I hope Keith forgives me for coming across a little bit nihilistic and, I guess, who cares kind of. But it seemed to me that the Syracuse team didn't care.
No,
If you have allotted time to practice yesterday and you don't, what kind of message does that tell to us, the people who have covered the team, and to the fans of the team? We can't be bothered to prepare for the final game of the season, potentially. What could potentially be our coach's final game. We can't be bothered. I don't know if there was some logistic holdup. I don't want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole, but you figure it out. This is do or die time. You didn't even practice, and it showed today when you lose 86-69 to SMU. Nico Horning, Jish Sokolsky with you on the double overtime until 8:30. You can get your voice heard by calling us or on social media at WAER Sports Talk.
Yeah, I mean, the whole gist with not practicing, right away, it just sends a message that you're kind of checked out of the season already. And as embarrassing it is, and like you were saying, you can't count on external factors maybe canceling that out or whatever. But it just shows you that this team was checked out. And I think right off the bat in the first half, I thought they were playing fine. But realistically, it's because Nate Kings was doing everything in this game, especially in the first half. He went ballistic, 17 points. 3 of 7 from beyond the arc, and he was playing lights out. And, I was watching Nate Kings, and he would look different than most of the other guys on the court as far as effort, attitude, how he was approaching this game. And so that made me wonder, I'm like, well, what other playoff experiences Kings has? So I went and looked, and he, they had the West Coast Conference tournament last year with Oregon State. And he put up 18 points against Pepperdine in that game, went 4 for 8 from the three-point line. And so, he's got that prior edge
Big
to where
Kings.
he can produce in big moments. And so I think he was obviously trying to prove himself, like he mentioned in the press conference, to the coaching staff that brought him on, to his future, and how he could proceed the rest of the way. And I just think without Kings, there probably wouldn't have been more. Syracuse wouldn't have been as close without Kings' 17 points in the first half.
And that's the case all season. Syracuse is probably going to have to prepare for a life without Nate Kings. You heard him in the postgame press conference saying that this was probably his final game. I think that they're seeing if any of those JUCO years could give him some more, but I mean, he's 24 years old. I doubt that there's any more eligibility left for him. I would say if I'm Syracuse, I'm preparing for life without Nate Kings. But that's going to be a tough life because at the end of the day, he was the one who brought it at the end of the season consistently.
And as inconsistent as he was from
Sure,
times,
yeah. I think like at the start of the season. Yeah. You'll take a 25-point game.
100%.
And then in the Pittsburgh game, he also went off as well. I mean, he had
his moments,
This is a guy who, despite how bad the season was getting, always kept a great attitude, always tried looking for a shot. A lot of people thought, oh, he's the Chris Bell replacement, but he's like Chris Bell if he had 5 more layers of maturity on him. I think that Nate Kings, even though he had his early shooting struggles, was struggling to find his way into the offense, still did all he could defensively all season long. And yeah, there were moments where the shots weren't falling. But I think Nate Kings was the bright spot on the team this year and the only real, consistently positive memory from the team all season. I want to talk about J.J. Starling, though, because this is what a sad story it's been, right? A sad story in the last 4 games of his collegiate career. He has 6 points in his last 4 games. This is supposed to be your franchise cornerstone. He was supposed to be the hometown kid who brought the team back. I don't know what is on him, what's on coaching, but it did not work. In the final 4 games of his collegiate career, he dropped 6 points. Today, he played just 13 minutes. They didn't even let him close out his last collegiate game.
3 baskets, 2 points a game, no points against Pitt. embarrassment, to be honest, from JJ. And this is a guy that showed a lot of promise and a lot of great skill set. You know, he can drive down, get to the hoop as much as you want. He can knock down some threes if needed, but he was just, I don't know if it was him taking a back seat most of the year, kind of letting his leadership shine through and then let other guys do the work, but to have this type of performance in the last few games, I don't know what to make of it, besides the fact that I you know,
I'm
for a local kid, senior, of course. Like that's how it is, but I don't know if it's a personal thing with him. I don't know if he's got a nagging, you know, hand, finger thing that's kind of preventing him from going full force, but for a guy that had, you know, he was averaging, 15 points for a while, even in prior seasons, and he ends it this way. It's kind of shocking.
We don't necessarily want to speculate. We're going back to coaching because we got Lou from Yorkville on the line. You want to talk about some coaching. Lou, you are on WAER right now.
Well, thanks for taking my call, and just want to go over the coaching situation. First of all, I think the most important thing is to get a good AD in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been reading up on Carparelli, and he seems like he would be a great fit, you know, especially with the way that the programs are driven by football and his experience in football. And there's another possible candidate that's at Syracuse now that was at Pitt, but I don't think that this person's credentials could match up to Carparelli, because Carparelli's got to go out and he's got to raise money.
Right.
And he's got to have a coach. He's got to have a coach that's going to be able to raise money. And the other thing I've been reading on the blogs is that Mr. Lally, the gentleman who's been the philanthropic gentleman who's given a lot of money, is, I guess, very high on this coach from USF. Well, that's all I've been doing is reading some good things about him. But more importantly, I just got a call from a former Syracuse player that I went to high school with, was in Troy the other day, an old-time pizza place called DeFazio's. And who was sitting in DeFazio's? Boeheim and Jerry McNamara.
Oh. Well,
how's that? Then, hey, look, I'm not calling for any rumors, but they were there. And I went there last couple days ago to the pizza place, and I know the owner, and he says, yeah, they were there. And, you know, he just backed up what my friend had to say. Hey, you see what happens. But I don't know. You know, you got to have a coach that's going to, you know, that these people are going to open their wallets for. Look at what they're doing for Fran Brown.
Right.
We got to just make sure we continue it. I don't care if they pick someone from outside or inside, but it's got to be somebody good, because this program is number 5 in the country, all-time wins, elite program, and we have to get somebody elite. We can't let our guard down, guys.
Yeah, Lou, they
Thank
cannot.
you for taking my call.
Of course, Lou. Thank you so much for calling in. If you want to be like Lou and call in, 315-443-2011. Potential coaching thing, I'm not sure, though. I think that, you know, just given Jim Boeheim and Jerry McNamara's past, they're probably just close personal friends. McNamara was a 4-year player here at SU, played under Boeheim, was one of his favorite players on a very winning program. So I wouldn't necessarily read too much into that, but definitely, I guess, something to note. But yeah, that's a great point that Lou was bringing up about the new AD having to bring in a coach that's going to carry the flag of what Syracuse should be.
You can talk about what coach you want. You can talk about who you think Syracuse is going to get. And I think you bring up a great point with the USF coach being a possible...
That's Brian Hodgson,
Correct.
For people that don't know. He is actually a Western New York native, so there is some connection there.
But aside from that, you do need an AD who is going to fundamentally know the structure, or at least attempt to know as much of the structure as you can at this point in college athletics. That includes the NIL, that includes the transfer portal, that includes grabbing money or trying to raise money from donors and from alumni that want to contribute to athletics. And so I think it comes down to this point, what the Syracuse approach is, because you have Fran Brown, you have Steve Angeli, and the football side of things that's been on the up and up. Of course, a lousy season last year. Once Angeli went down. But then you have the basketball end of things where the school's built on basketball. It's been a downfall the last few years, and people are starting to turn their heads. And when you have that going on, you got to get back on track. And I think it all starts at the top with an athletic director. You mentioned Carparelli. I think that would be a great hire. He has the track record of kind of being in the management part of things, especially with the bowl season, and kind of being ahead a little bit on the new structure, if you will.
Right, and the other name, of course, that's been tossed around that Lou mentioned was Heather Lyke, the former Pitt AD, the current assistant athletic director here at Syracuse, but there's some worrying allegations at Pitt women's basketball that just came out, and then, of course, the anonymous HR complaint that was reported by the DO. Just something to keep in mind. We're not confirming nor denying anything. We don't have the facts on that, but these are allegations that are out about this person whose hat is in the ring for the job. We're going to take a quick step aside before we talk any more about Syracuse men's basketball's future. After losing to SMU 69-86 today, we'll have more double overtime coverage when we return after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
Syracuse men's lacrosse had arguably maybe Gary Gates' best weekend ever as head coach.
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
The voice of Syracuse men's lacrosse and Syracuse women's basketball as well. Tim Leonard, Javon Edmonds of Syracuse.com.
Check out weekly episodes and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening. We hope you're enjoying this WAER sports broadcast. Our sports staff goes where the teams go, home and away, and prepare for days before each game broadcast. Our talk show and podcast hosts analyze games, pour over stats, and keep up on sports trends. These and many behind-the-scenes opportunities are made possible by listener donations. So if you're a fan or an alum, donate to keep our sports legacy strong at WAER.org and click donate.
I'm Jesse Thorne. On Bullseye this week, we're doing something a little different. We're going to play back some of my favorite conversations with the members of Monty Python's Flying Circus, including Eric Idle.
And we weren't very good at endings. Holy Grail stopped with the police coming in and arresting everybody, which my daughter says is the worst ending of a film anywhere.
Plus, Terry Jones, John Cleese, and Terry Gilliam on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
There are a lot of things you can do with a knife. Some slow, some fast, some even with a twist. And on the next Snap Judgment, we're going to dance on the razor's edge. Snap Judgment proudly presents The Cut. Do not miss it.
Sunday morning at 10 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Into Igatolu. Pierre, left corner three, wide open, he knocks it down. That was likely the dagger.
Welcome back to the double overtime. Nico Horning and Jish Sokolsky breaking down this 86-69 loss for Syracuse. Final game of the season, final game and first game of the ACC tournament, if you look at it that way. Syracuse, a quick bounce from any sort of postseason basketball. And no, we're not talking about March Madness. We haven't talked about March Madness in 5 years.
The playoffs? We're talking about playoffs?
Yeah.
To quote Jim Mora, former Colts coach.
Yes. Anyway, not a great performance. They hung in there in the first half. We talked about Adrian Autry a little bit on the press conference. I want to go back to that before we kind of really break down this game, because I think we talked to it a little bit, and then we started kind of getting away from ourselves on, who some new coaches would be. But one thing that did stick out to me, and you mentioned this real quick, Jish, was the NIL landscape. And for me, whether you do look at the players not exactly wanting to play for Autry or the coaching staff as a whole, because there were some down moments throughout the year, I think you can equate this to Adrian Autry kind of getting stuck in a bad situation. I feel like Autry was going through a pandemic with this Syracuse program, in the sense that NIL is COVID, and you're trying to come in and maneuver that while coaching what you have on the basketball court.
Oh my!
I think there is a difference with what you have to deal with, whether it's on the floor and externally, that affects your team, because you're looking at the other ACC teams, especially this year, when the competition's been good, and you simply just can't sustain that from time to time. If you agree with me or not, call us in, 2011. And I know Jish is laughing right now, but
you know,
I got a point.
I think, Nico, that NIL has killed fewer people than COVID has, and has put fewer people in the hospital.
I don't mean the killing part.
I know what you mean. I'm
the
having fun with you. I'm
yeah.
having fun. I know what you mean. It's definitely something that, in the sense that I guess you can compare it to a pandemic where it's very new and rapidly spreading, and all these executives are having a hard time figuring out how to deal with it. How to do we put our masks on? Do we get these vaccinations? What have you? There's so much information out there and still a lot of confusion, but that does give you hope then, Nico, right? Because we did neutralize COVID, and there
is a future ahead.
There is perhaps a future ahead, but that's where I think the analogy kind of falls off there,
right?
Because there won't, in my eyes, there will not be some easy fix, and not to say the fix to COVID was easy, but there will not be some end-all, be-all fix where just every team can get vaccinated and they understand NIL now. No. Players are going to start demanding more and more money, and then, okay, well, does there have to be a salary cap? Does there have to be certain limits that are put on how much money you can give a player? And there are currently right now, but there are so many ways I think teams are going to try and sneak around it and find ways where they can kind of bend the rules a little bit. This only creates another little avenue that there's going to be. I know some coaches just pounding for. It reminds me earlier this season. Remember when Scott Drew at Baylor brought in James Nagy, who was drafted to the NBA, and he was allowed to play because of a loophole because he didn't actually play in the NBA, blah, 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 blah. There's going to be some contractual fine print that'll go to the Supreme Court, but there might not be time to litigate it before teams are already, doing their damage with these loopholes. So I don't think there is some quick and easy fix. There's not some quick fix to this NIL issue.
And we can get into more of that. But we got John from Liverpool who wants to discuss the season as a whole. John, what do you got?
Well, let me first talk about this game.
Sure.
Again, they got out-rebounded the whole year long. They got out-rebounded. This team kind of played small. And this game, again, they got out-rebounded, and hopefully they can correct that going forward. The rebounding, there was a lot of problems with turnovers all year long and different things. But it turned out that they were not a good rebounding team. Donnie Freeman, I thought, would be more of a down-low scoring defensive presence. He's got to improve that if he's going to go pro. I don't even know what he's going to do as far as that's concerned. But I think that Adrian Autry has handled this whole situation with class.
Mm-hmm.
The press conference, I thought it was he's handled it well. It's got to be a very difficult situation. He came here for 4 years. He played here for 4 years. Can't be an easy situation for him. But
not an easy situation at all. You get out rebounded 44-31 as a whole, and then you have Kyle, who only had 5 boards. You mentioned Donnie Freeman only had a few, and I think escaped to the perimeter more often than not, or at least not in the paint as much as you would want. John, do you think that sort of thing revolves around the coaching, or is it the lack of experience in a young guy like Freeman and Kyle, who didn't play a whole lot at UCLA, that kind of came to haunt the Orange at the end of the season?
Well, I always put it on the players. I think coaches get too much credit and too much blame. It's all about the players. The players kind of didn't pan out as much as we had hoped. Kyle, I can't believe, for a great athlete, hopefully he's got some, I don't know, he doesn't have a future in basketball, but he's a great athlete. I think he'd make a great soccer goalie.
Wow.
But
former track star.
It's but that's my point on the coaching, and if I had to give a pick, I would like to see G-Mac come back and coach. But whoever they get, you want to have success. But my vote is for G-Mac.
That sounds like 2 votes for G-Mac. We did have a caller earlier also kind of pounding the table for the former Syracuse guard to come back and coach Syracuse. John, thank you so much for the call.
Thanks, guys.
A lot of insightful things here. I do agree. I think Autry has much grief as I think the fan base has given him. He has handled everything so well, even though, end of the day, 49-48 head coaching record, only had 6 ACC wins in both of the last 2 years. I think that it's time for him to bow out of this. I think that you're good. But at the end of the day, the rebounding thing, that you can't put that on coaching. SMU had a 7'2" center out there, and the tallest guy in Syracuse was 6'9".
Right.
You can maybe blame roster construction,
That's
which
what I'm
is
saying.
some sort
a lot of it comes down to the external factors. I think a lot of it comes back to that.
But you're not going to find a 7-footer that can play in the portal every day.
And based on the way Kyle played for a lot of the season, in the block, guy's a ridiculous athlete, and I would want him any day on
of course,
a team. So you're not going to go to bat for that or for a change in that. But I think there is some grace to give Autry just because of some things that went on. At the end of the day, should this team have been better with the roster and talent that it had? Probably. But at the same time, the guys that were supposed to step up didn't exactly step up. You could look at Starling for sure. Donnie Freeman had his games. He also had his poor games. Nathan George, he can dish the ball out, but other than that, he's fairly inconsistent. The list goes on and on. The talent's there. They just couldn't put it together.
I just feel like Donnie Freeman, 7 points, fouled out in the final game of the season. It's almost indicative of who he is as a player. Donnie Freeman will give you 28 great points on some great minutes against your BCs of the world, against Wake Forest, but you lose those games.
Yeah.
When was the last time Donnie Freeman had a dominant performance in a game that Syracuse won and dominated? I'm not saying that, Donnie Freeman has empty stats, but that argument, you know what? I will say that. Yeah, he has some empty stats. He was the team's leading scorer, but when was the last time Freeman actually showed up when it mattered? Against Duke, sure, I guess he was the leading scorer, but in the UNC game only he was held under 10 points. Both UNC, or in the second UNC game, he was held under 10 points. In this game, he was held to 7 points. He wasn't around for some of the bigger games of the season, and that's not his fault. I'm not putting that on him. The Tennessees, the Houstons of the world. But what difference would it really make at the end of the day? I feel like all of Donnie Freeman's big and awesome performances come in losing efforts, which it's just frustrating to see. And then when the team really needs him to step up in games where the season's on the line, like today,
right,
he only gives you 7 points and then fouls out. 4 turnovers led the team as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what the future holds for Donnie Freeman, but I don't know if everyone's talking about him going to the NBA. I don't know if he gets drafted in this current state.
I agree. I don't think he gets drafted. I wouldn't want him back at Syracuse, and I think he won. The important games that Syracuse won this season were without him.
Yes, which
is the whole thing.
It's an uncomfortable conversation to have. I think Donnie Freeman, what's best for his career is to hit the transfer portal, and I think he has to go to a different school that can utilize him in the way that he wants to play, right?
And he'll make money somewhere.
He is a tall, lanky power forward, and he could do a lot of great things for your basketball team. He can shoot. He has a silky smooth, almost Dirk Nowitzki-esque fadeaway jumper. I love watching it. But Syracuse needed him to carry the load, and they needed him to be a bigger threat. They needed him to play in the post, and I honestly think his game translates more as like your Danilo Gallinari kind of taller wing.
I like that.
Someone who can kind of just play on the perimeter, and you don't need him to bang down low because his frame is too skinny, I think, to really make that much of an impact against some of your bigger-bodied defenders down low. And you saw that when he was matched up against guys like Caleb Wilson or Cam Boozer, even though most of those guys would go to William Kyle, who could hold his own. He's more built muscularly. Donnie Freeman, I think, needs to go to a team that's going to use him more as a tall wing rather than a power forward that Syracuse needed him to be.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. If you have any thoughts on Donnie Freeman or the way this roster might proceed going forward, please feel free to give us a call at 315-443-2011. You can also interact with us on our X account, WAER Sports Talk. Nico Horning, Jis Sikulski here up until 8:30, breaking down the Syracuse and SMU game partially, and also a little bit of a futuristic talk here that Jish and I are having. So
it's true. One thing I want to mention, Nico, SMU had 0 bench points.
Yeah, that was a crazy when we I didn't realize that till maybe midway through the second half, maybe with 8 minutes to go in the second half, and once that was brought up, I was like, wow.
You got to tip your cap to Andy Ensfield.
No doubt.
That's a coach who knows how to play when your back's
get your
against
guys
the wall.
ready. To have
Yes.
all 5 clicking and
right.
not rely on your bench at all. I mean, that's That says something.
And none of them fouled out. It's a dangerous game you play when all of your starters play plus 30 minutes. Right. But, I do the same thing in, like, my 2K rebuilds. When my team's down 3-1, shoot, we're making that rotation like 6 or 7 guys. We got to win a game. Trust your starters. I love the plan from Andy Ensfeld, and that paid dividends in the second half. Surprisingly, none of his guys really got tired. They just kept stroking it from deep. They got 44 rebounds. Like, you got to tip your cap to SMU at the end of the day, which is still a last 4 team in, according to ESPN. So if Syracuse's season ended at the hands of a tournament team, I'm sure you don't feel terrible about that if you're an Orange fan.
Defensively, and we'll get into more big picture stuff here soon, but to kind of wrap up on maybe this game specifically before we bring on a reporter, Andrew Della Piana, coming up soon. What went wrong in the second half? Because
everything.
At halftime, it was a winnable game for Syracuse. You kind of see the defense collapse in the second half. SMU started to go on a run. Syracuse started hucking up threes. You mentioned everything. It probably was everything, but why can't – and Gino mentioned this a bunch of the broadcast. Well, you're supposed to turn it on in the second half. Well, yeah. Why couldn't they?
Syracuse just hasn't done it all season.
Yeah.
I think Syracuse, they built a team full of guys with a lot of talent, but guys who get tired quick. They've lost, I think, the majority of their second halves this year, where they just get walked out of the gym by their opponent. They always keep it close. Again, like, if you could have predicted this team was going to lose, and you could have predicted how they did it too. It seems like whenever the team gets a shot run on them, like or rather a run gone on them, they fall flat. They can't get the momentum back. It's like riding a bike, where once you stop pedaling, you start wobbling and you fall over, and that's what Syracuse has been all season. My buddy actually texted me during the game, and here might be an explanation. This is really funny. He said that Syracuse shot 44% from the floor today in honor of the late, great Jim Brown.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, well, I think he was kind of joking there, but still, the point stands. Like, that's the kind of inspired effort we saw in the second half from the Orange.
Wow. All right. Before we step aside and get to Andrew, we want to take Stan's call from Solvay and discuss a little bit of this coaching change. Stan, what do you think?
Hey there. It's sad that the season's over. By the way, what's this Louisville? They play Louisville, someone said? What's that?
SMU would play Louisville because they just won the game. If Syracuse won, it would play Louisville.
I know. I thought someone said Syracuse played.
Oh, man.
Like I didn't get
in their dreams.
But,
yeah.
No, sorry about that.
All good.
But, well, first of all, the coaching thing, please, no Jerry McNamara. But
right.
They need to go with someone that's more proven. They really, if they want to change this program, it's just like, it's not a good move. I don't think it is. He hasn't really proven himself to be a good coach, Jerry McNamara. I mean, he might have had a good year or wherever he is at, but please, get somebody with some experience and that's proven. You got to go that route. I think that's what they got to do. It's got to be from outside, or I mean, I don't know what, but not G-Mac, not Hopkins, not anything like that. If people talk like that on the internet, and I hope they don't do that, because that'll be probably just the same old stuff.
Yeah.
And then Donnie Freeman. I mean, obviously, before that, well, of course, we'd love to have Rick Pitino. He used to coach him.
Oh yeah,
he's great. Yeah. I mean, that would you ever get a guy like that? Who knows?
Maybe not.
But it would be. But we got to go that route. We can't. Please. I mean, Jared, please. It would be a disaster. I think. Well, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know. But I hope they don't do that. They're gonna have to spend some money and go for it. With the coach. And Donnie Freeman. Like I said, it didn't seem like he could play his position that well, but he's a good basketball player.
Yes.
He's going to get better. And I hope he stays with Syracuse and a new coach comes in and utilizes him. I hope he stays. I like him. And I like, it's sad because all these guys they're really classy guys, the guys on the team. I love watching the game of basketball. I still love watching SU. I know they had their problems, but hey, things didn't work out. And I still tip my hat to these guys. I really do. Even Adrian Autry. I like Adrian Autry, and I wish that it worked. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe he won't be let go, but
who knows?
It doesn't seem. But he's a class guy, and he's one of the greatest basketball players ever played at the school, and he loves this school. And this whole thing is kind of sad. So I really like Adrian Autry, but things didn't seem to work out. So hopefully, with the coaching change, they really got to go for it. They no messing around with these guys, G-Mac and stuff. I'm sorry, it's it doesn't seem like the right choice.
Well said. Well said.
I agree with the sentiment. I don't think GMAC is the guy. Thank you again for the call. But to say he hasn't done anything, I think might be a little bit of a understatement, or rather that might be not giving him enough credit. I mean, he's at 9 o'clock. He's competing for the MAAC championship, the MAC championship with Siena. They had a pretty good year this year. So,
well, here's the deal. I don't know if whether you want to go internal, external. I think it's time to go outside the bubble and grab someone. You have to spend the money. You have to spend the money. You cannot shy away from the money anymore. And I do think if you are going to keep things inside, you're going to go with GMAC and try and get him to Syracuse. I think that's obviously the route there.
Sure.
But you got to give the guy credit what he's done at Siena. But it's time to go outside and grab someone. I think that's the most important thing. All right. When we come back, we have our reporter Andrew Della Piana joining us live from Charlotte, and we'll break this one down a little bit more, and excited to have Andrew on the show. Don't go anywhere. It's Double Overtime on WAER.
Iranian Kurdish opposition groups exiled in Iraq are preparing for the fall of the Islamic Republic next door in Iran.
Iranian regime will fall. The end could be now or in 1 year, but the Americans will support us, and we are going in.
A visit to one of their camps on the next morning edition from NPR News.
Tomorrow morning from 5 to 9 on WAER.
News app from the BBC.
Understand what's happening.
With news.
What's going on?
Heat waves, cyclones, storms, floods.
Increasingly unpredictable weather events.
Interviews.
2024 is the hottest year on record.
This is an uncharted situation.
And analysis of the day's global events.
In the Middle East, it's very difficult to be shocked nowadays.
That's News app from the BBC.
Weekdays after morning edition at 9 on WAER, your local NPR station.
With so much going on, it can be hard to keep up with who's doing what and why. I'm Aisha Roscoe, host of Weekend Edition Sunday, letting you know whether it's news from across the country and the world, or a deep conversation about a novel, movie, or music, we got you. Grab your coffee or your earbuds and tune in to Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
Syracuse men's lacrosse had arguably maybe Gary Gates' best weekend ever as head coach.
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
The voice of Syracuse men's lacrosse and Syracuse women's basketball as well. Tim Leonard, Javon Edmonds of Syracuse.com.
Check out weekly episodes and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Off to Starling. Still looking for his first points. Right-handed lay. He finally gets it to go. J.J. Starling, after going 0 for his last 15, laces his shot.
Welcome back to the Double Overtime here on WAER, and we are now joined with our reporter Andrew Della Piana, who is live down in Charlotte. Andrew, end of the season's here. First thoughts?
Finally, right, guys? Finally, it's over. I mean, what an embarrassing second half by this team today. After creating a little bit of momentum, ending that first half, you kept it somewhat close to start the second half. Then SMU goes on that nice little run, and Syracuse, they tried to make it interesting, making it, a 10-point game with about 5 minutes left, but this team was so gassed, and SMU just wasn't having any of it.
They'd love to stick around just like they did in that Louisville game.
All season long.
Yeah.
Hey, Andrew, it's your buddy Jish here. First time, long time talking to you. No, I'm just playing. I honestly, I can't quite meet you where you are with how mad you're getting about this, because I honestly feel kind of numb and apathetic at this point. What new can you say about the team? They've lost 6 in a row, and all basically in the exact same way. I guess besides that Louisville game where they lost the first half instead of the second half, this team just never played a full 40 minutes, and it's not like I'm going to miss watching them, you know?
No, absolutely not. I think that's honestly like the culmination, though, of this final game of the season being a microcosm of what's happened all season long. I think that's where the frustration comes out, because think about what's gone wrong all regular season long, where you kind of play a somewhat decent first half, then you get blown out in the second half and you don't give yourself a chance. And to kind of finally see it come full circle in the final game of the season in your conference tournament, it really only seemed fitting for this team to end the season the way they did today.
All right, let's break down that Adrian Autry press conference. There were some points of emphasis on, what his players, I guess, could and couldn't do throughout the season, the inconsistencies to, putting some blame on the NIL landscape and where Syracuse is at with things. What was your biggest takeaway from what Autry had to say?
For Autry's point of view, it's one of those things where you feel for the guy, but you don't at the same time. Like, this was his baby to take over after Jim Boeheim retired. And when he was answering questions, a lot of that, you guys were listening to it as well, a lot of it was dictated by, okay, how has your time here been? It wasn't game-related, what are you looking forward to next season? You can tell, guys, the writing is on the wall for this guy. He feels it. I almost got to a point where I thought he was going to break down in tears, to be honest, because you can just tell this place means a whole lot to him, and he just never lived up to the standard that it was when he played here. And I think that's where Autry kind of got that accepting moment of, wow, this is finally it. He said he has meetings tomorrow with the rest of his staff, with the rest of the athletic department, and potentially that'll be the news that we get, guys, is that he will no longer be the head coach.
I think it's all but confirmed at that point, though, Andrew,
right?
Of
course, absolutely.
I know John Wildhack's on his way out the door, but he did say last season if Syracuse isn't playing meaningful games in March, then some conversations and decisions.
You wouldn't consider a 14th seed in the ACC tournament as meaningful?
Well, I mean,
what?
You might have to remind the Syracuse team that this was a meaningful game because they didn't even show up to practice. They didn't show up to practice yesterday. I know we're talking about practice and it's not a game. Use your Allen Iverson quote if you want, but to me, it didn't seem like Syracuse even treated this game as if it was a meaningful game.
No, Jish, that's so funny that you bring that up, is because when we got the email about the open media practices for yesterday, and we didn't see Syracuse on it, we were kind of looking around, trying to figure out information. Oh, Syracuse declined their open practice. So, to walk you through the next steps, we then heard from an SU spokesperson that they didn't practice during the open session because of travel plans. Guess what, guys? They fly private. They can practice and get here whenever they want.
It's
spring
break.
It's spring break. So they got here late last night. They practiced behind closed doors. And maybe it's better that we didn't see the practice, to be completely honest, because it revealed a whole lot about how this team has been playing offensively in this season.
Yeah, it's not a bad point at all.
I have been playing offensively for sure. It's been offensive to my eyes, Andrew.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All I know is, whatever direction this Syracuse goes in with Autry, I hope he's remembered most for his playing days, and not for the coaching.
Well, you're not going to remember him for his coaching days.
That is true. That is true. But this happens a lot with former players and coaches or GMs where they try and go back and it just doesn't work out a second time. And a lot of people dwell on the second time. I hope Syracuse fans do not, because Autry's been through a lot. Obviously, the ever-changing rosters, the new money that's going into things. There's a lot he couldn't control. And what he could control, it didn't pan out the way anyone wanted to. So I think that's one conversation to have. You have anything to add on that real quick before I switch
and
gears
think
here?
about, too, the way this roster was especially constructed this year behind J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. Those two were kind of like the catalyst of, all right, when we talked to these guys in the preseason, it was guys that were hard-nosed, gritty, ready to go to work, guys that J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman wanted on this team. I think almost every single person on this roster today that played outperformed both of them. Is that fair to say?
I think so.
Sure.
I think so. I think it's it's not a bad point at all. Andrew, real quick, we're going to step aside for 10 seconds, and we'll be back on the double overtime.
Hey, folks, I'm Jason Horowitz, voice of the Raiders in WAER Class of 2005. You're listening to the original home of the Orange, WAER Syracuse.
Speaking of the Raiders, I hear that the Max Crosby trade just fell through. The Baltimore Ravens just backed out of that, but that's neither here nor there. That was nuts. I just found that out today. That just appeared on Twitter. SMU beat Syracuse 86-69. We've got Andrew Delapiana on the line with us. Andrew, I mean, you were sitting courtside too. There was a time when Melo got the ball. That was pretty exciting. Boeheim was there. I don't know if you were really focusing on their reactions. I know you were focused on the game, but, I feel like if those two give you any sort of indication, those would be like probably the equivalent of God at this Syracuse basketball program. If they're given any sort of reaction on the sideline as to what's to come, I mean, their reactions are probably more important than anybody in Syracuse's.
Yeah, Jim Boeheim was actually on our flight here to Charlotte.
Did you say hi?
We did not. No, he
Oh.
was sitting in first class, and we were kind of back in row 15 by coach, but that's neither here nor there. But we did see him getting his baggage, and we were kind of surprised that he wasn't on the team plane here. It's interesting. The former coach was actually got here before the team did. So that doesn't make any sense, first of all.
Wow.
But seeing Mel there courtside,
That's crazy.
Making his way around, shaking hands, saying hello and goodbye to everyone, you can just tell there's a somber place around this team, this program right now that, as you guys have talked about all through this double overtime, people have just kind of accepted it at this point. Like, it's been going on for these last 3 years. You're just kind of like, all right, that's just kind of how it goes with Syracuse right now, and I think that's where frustration boils in more and more as the rest of the season went along.
Mm-hmm. And someone that did not, I guess, join that pack was Nate Kings today and the way he played. And, I thought he had a different level of energy. Obviously, he was knocking down his shots and everything. But he had a couple of good games at the end of last year with Oregon State when some games mattered and some elimination games were on the line. I thought he stepped up as much as he could today, and no one else really did.
He absolutely did. I'd like for his backcourt maybe to give him some help.
True.
Nate George, 2 for 13. 0 for 9, yes, he did dish out 11 assists.
Why is he
This
shooting
guy,
9
though,
times from the three-point line?
They were playing chuck and duck in that second half going down
Well,
by
still.
21.
Yeah.
So I understand, but to not make a single one as your point guard, this guy has been so hot and cold this year. We'll give him praise when he plays phenomenal, but then he has stinkers like this when he needs to really play well. That's kind of just a culmination, though, right? When these players need to play well, they don't, and when it's some random off game in conference play, one of them goes off and says, okay, I think they're turning the page a little bit. But they aren't. They aren't when they need to most.
Big emphasis on the duck there. Every time they shot one, it was probably going to miss. 26% from the three-point line for the game, 9 for 34. And like you said, this game really was a microcosm of everything that went wrong this season. The only two guys that made multiple threes were Nate Kings and Tyler Betsy, and I'd argue those were the only two guys that could shoot on the team, I guess, other than Donnie Freeman, who did make a 3 of his own, but his shooting was very streaky. It would only come around every so often. His season high was, 4 three-pointers in a game that happened against Wake Forest, so it's not like you could rely on him as a shooter.
No.
So the fact that you don't have practice that's, open to the media, and then you come out, you shoot 34 threes, and you only make 9, yeah, that does definitely, to your prior point, Andrew, bring out some questions. Well, what were you trying to hide as you head into this final game of the season, for sure?
And you think about the supposed good shooters of this team, right? And, I think you guys have kind of hit the nail on the head on J.J. Starling, but maybe we can dive into this a little bit more. You want to talk about severely disappointing, right? This was a guy that had preseason All-ACC expectations coming into this year. And what does he do, guys, in the final 5 games of the year? What do you have, a combined 12 points? Something like that?
Combined 6 in the last 4 games. Hey, Andrew, put a pin on that for a second. We do have a caller on the line. Michael from Manlius wants to join the conversation. We'll get right back to you, Andrew. But, Michael, what do you got for us?
Hey, guys. First of all, how y'all doing?
Fantastic. Well, as good as we can be,
all
right?
Okay, so the best game SU played this whole season is hide and seek because it seems like they were the swamp fox, always attacking and retreating. And it has something to do with Autry's coaching because, sometimes at some schools you spend all your time trying to get egos to get along with one another. You don't have time to teach anything. It seems like Autry spent a lot of his effort trying to say the right things at press conferences and keep his players in line. And I'm just being brutally honest with you today. And we need a coach who can teach his players to be men, honestly.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't know what he's saying behind closed doors because I've been to those press conferences. He seems appropriately fired up after some of these games. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say that he's not coaching them as men behind closed doors. I don't want to speculate on that is what I'm trying to say.
He's not, guys. He basically is an enabler. That's somebody who writes, your mom writes you notes when you go to school if you're late, That's an enabler. That's what he was this season. I love the guy. He's a great guy.
How do you know that other than from just what you've seen on the sideline?
Oh, say again?
How do you, like, other than the way he's presented, like, on the sideline and in press conferences, how do we have any way of knowing that he's enabling? Because what it
I
sounds
talk to him a lot on the coaches show when I call in, and I can get a sense that he's trying to keep a lid on a volatile. It's like Pandora's box. You try to keep it closed. That's what he's trying to do, and God be with him for trying that. But at some point, you got to put your best cards forward and, call the other person's bluff. Try your best. So that's my honest appraisal, guys.
Sure. I mean, maybe we just see the same thing different ways, but I don't know. I think that he has at least tried to hold his players to account. It's a matter of, do the players take accountability at the end of the day, and can they really, play for a full 40 minutes? That's a different discussion. I don't know. I'm just not there. But I respect your opinion on that, I guess, Michael.
Thanks, guys. And once again, I appreciate all your coverage this season. Go Cuse next year.
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate the call.
Bye.
You can look at this different ways, whether it's the roster construction or whether it's the way that Autry's trying to get his guys going. And Andrew, you can speak on this too, where, you only have a year to really work through these guys and learn through these guys, then they're off to another team. It's frustrating, and you can't put the blame on Autry for some of that.
It's tough, and depending on what kind of coach you do have, like I understand both sides of the coin, where you have these older school guys that want to bring in guys and develop them for 3, potentially 4 years, but that's not how it works, guys, anymore. That's not how it works, and it's not going to cut out that way. There has to be someone in here that understands that they are okay with 1, potentially 2-year rentals to win them basketball games. You're not here to develop guys.
Correct. And as frustrating as it sounds, that's where we are. I mean, you look at Boeheim. He developed those guys.
But that's the old school, though, right?
Correct.
That's your Big East, 80s,
Pre-NIL.
90s. I mean, exactly. Before all this stuff, I was watching reruns of like old Big East tournament games a couple of days ago. And I'm just thinking of these guys that have been with the program for 3-4 years. When you see a stud of a freshman, you're like, man, that guy's going to be really good in 3 years. That's just not how it works anymore. And Autry never accepted that.
All right, we got Dave from Liverpool who has some more comments on the coaching. Dave, your thoughts?
Yeah, I can tell you why Coach Autry is a bad coach, because any basketball coach could tell you that you take out a guy immediately if he always shoots a three-point shot in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock.
Yep.
I mean, Boeheim used to take out players when they would chuck it up in the first 10 seconds. Autry never does that. He lost control of the players at the very beginning.
I mean, you saw times where I think Boeheim, if I remember right, pulled Chris Bell because he just
he got pulled for 15 seconds after missing a 3 against Wake Forest one time.
That sounds right. So,
I mean, Boeheim was always known for pulling guys when they just came down and chucked up a 3. I was listening to the Connecticut women's coach, and he says that if his players don't pass the ball around, that they're not going to play. That's what the Connecticut women's coach says all the time.
Yeah, and Gino Auriemma has coached some of the best women's basketball players of all time. So, yeah, you're right. That is what makes a great coach. And I think, on the other hand, Autry kind of pulls his hot hands, too. I've seen countless times this season where J.J. Starling finally gets things going. He's put on the bench. Sadiq White gets a lot of things going, and because he's a freshman, he gets put on the bench. So that is a great point, and I think that there is more to it than just pulling players after missing a shot, but it's keeping your hot hands on.
Let me just say that if I was Sadiq White or Freeman, I would go play for Rick Pitino on St. John's, because he's a great coach and he would develop those guys, because I personally think Sadiq White has maybe a better upside than Freeman.
We'll see about that. I mean, a lot to grow for Sadiq White.
No, for sure.
The early signs have definitely been encouraging.
Yeah. Dave, thanks for the call. If it were me, I'm going to St. John's right now. I don't know about you, Andrew.
That's fair. I think that's a good point brought up by Mike, is Donnie Freeman, kind of piggybacking off of that J.J. Starling point. This was the highest rated recruit since Mello, guys.
Yep.
You know what award he got at the end of the season?
Yeah.
All ACC honorable mention by the highest recruit since Mello?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. He scores 7 points in an elimination game, has more turnovers than assists, same number of turnovers than rebounds. He did say after this game, though, I will give him a little bit of slack. This was the most difficult he's ever been guarded in his life, he said, during conference play. And it absolutely was. He was double-teamed almost every single time he touched the ball in conference play.
Yeah,
But,
I mean,
guys, what game are we in the season that he's still, when the double team comes, he's trying to fire it across the end of the floor to find someone else there?
Yeah, that turnover was ridiculous.
He's got to learn to be smarter.
What's the definition of insanity?
Doing
the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
You see,
So
Andrew,
by that case,
we both know that definition because we're both insane, I think. But
that's absolutely true.
Speaking of insane, Donnie Freeman did not show up today. Sadiq White also fouled out today, also with 7 points. I mean, I want to hear what you have to say because you were right there when Sadiq White had a fast break and it seemed like a ghost picked his pocket. Was there did a light fall from the ceiling that we didn't see it knock the ball out of his hand? That was just like play the Benny Hill theme music at this point. What happened there?
You're down by 19. He gets this cool steal. There's nobody within a country mile of him. Oh, I lost the ball.
I botched.
Oh, my God. I mean, if that doesn't sum up Syracuse's season in one play, I don't know what does, except for the defensive play. Like, this team doesn't make a lot of defensive plays. The nice steal definitely wasn't on the side of that. But he missed the dunk, and you're like, oh, my, it never ends with this team. It never ends.
Hey, based off the last game today and, maybe talking with some of the guys afterwards, where do you think the future of this team can go? Who do you think is gone, and who do you think might have a chance to stay, and who would you want to stay based on what you saw today?
Yeah, it's kind of tough to have that, loaded question a couple hours after the final game of the season, but to not see Kyan today, understanding his injury, that definitely stinks. Hopefully he stays around. Sadiq, I definitely agree with that point on you guys that you definitely want Sadiq White here, but guys, you go through the rest of this roster. I mean, maybe Tyler Betsy, but go down the rest of this roster, guys.
Would you want a Nathan George on the team next year, personally?
I mean, I know he did put in his name for a waiver for another year, but
not Nate Kings, Nate George.
Oh, Nate George, sorry. Is he worth the money they gave him this season for NIL? Absolutely not. If he knocked down his paycheck a good amount of money, then yeah, I'm fine with that to put it other places.
Right.
I mean, they only spent $8 million this year in NIL. So, not really at the rate you're paying them.
Well, that's
to be honest.
one. Fix the NIL.
Yeah, but you can't build Rome in a day here. I would like to see Nate George come back, like you said, for a reduced price. We don't actually have the numbers.
And under two, guys, it'll probably be under a completely different system under a different coach.
I mean, like having a point guard in the building.
But here's the problem: is he did unbelievable again under Damon Stoudemire at Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And I would say Adrian Autry might be a little bit better of an offensive mind.
I wouldn't say
that. And he
that.
still played worse?
I wouldn't say that. I think that judging by the offenses we've seen all season where it was just street ball, New York City ball, ISO ball, maybe run a pick and roll, uninspired, with 14 seconds left in the shot clock. Yeah, no ball, like the negative ball movement, the negative bench points. I would hardly say Adrian Autry's a better offensive coach than really anyone in the country, unfortunately. That is just kind of how it got handed down from Boeheim, but, you need to run sets a lot more than Autry did. And I think maybe that's what Nate George needed, too. He needs more structure in the offense because he has talent as a passer. He's got talent as an on-ball defender. It's just a matter of when you have no idea what's going on, who's cutting where, if anybody even does cut, you're going to turn the ball over a lot. That's what Nate George did. He averaged 3 a game last year at Georgia Tech, so by no means was he a finished product as a sophomore. I think if he gets one more year as a senior, you could be talking about close to a finished product in Nate George.
Feels like he's got a little bit of a long way to go, though, in all honesty.
I don't know. I think the talent's there, for sure.
You could say that about any guy on this team.
That
But
is
they
true.
ever put it together? No.
But when you have a new coach coming in, presumably next year, I have a lot of faith that a senior Nate George could be a good foundational building block for that team.
I don't think that's a bad team.
You want a true point guard, right? Because you don't want to get stuck with the bottom of the barrels Jaquan Carlos is again.
Right.
At least he's 6'3" and can play defense.
Hey, Hofstra's in the conference championship.
Yeah, and who's not on that team? Jaquan Carlos.
You're right.
Oh, my
Good
gosh.
point.
Good guy, though. I like Juan Carlos as a person. I've met him before,
Yeah.
but not as a basketball
Not the
player.
point.
Yeah, not the point.
Anyway, we'll have Andrew. We'll be talking more about this, obviously, playing during the off season. Are you enjoy your short time in Charlotte? What are you watching right now? What's going on?
We are watching Wake Forest, Virginia Tech.
Okay.
It's hilarious watching Mike Young of Virginia Tech just scream at his players every single chance he can. This is a phenomenal. He's got the suit on, guys. You know me. I'm a suit guy with coaches.
Can
I
he be
love
the
to
next
see it.
Syracuse coach, Mike
Big
Young?
suit guy that loses games to the DO.
Oh, brutal.
Sorry.
Why'd you bring that up?
Yeah, it's still
Are we on the
sore.
same
What?
team?
Yeah, what?
we are on the
Friendly
same
fire.
team. I'm just,
It's because
You're
I'm
talking about the
you
media
get enough
cup?
minutes.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Come on, Nicholas.
Sorry,
You got
Andrew.
two coaches on the air with you right now, Nico.
That's right. You were coaching
oh
too.
my lord.
Oh my gosh.
I'll ride
Well,
for
whatever.
Andrew no matter what.
No, Andrew. You know what? We'll redeem ourselves at some point as a team.
Yeah,
As a team.
we'll run when I get back. How about that?
All right, sounds good. That was Andrew Della Piana. Enjoy the rest of your time in Charlotte, Andrew.
Thanks, guys.
All right. That was Andrew Della Piana, once again, our reporter from Charlotte. And alongside Josh Sokolsky, I'm Nico Horning. We will step aside one last time, give our final thoughts, tie a bow on the season, this game, the future, and get you set for 2026 to 27. It's weird to say. Anyway, don't go anywhere on the double overtime.
Federal funding for public media has been eliminated. That means decades of bipartisan support for public radio and television is ending. To be clear, NPR and this station aren't going anywhere, but we do need your support. Please give today to help keep rigorous, independent, and irreplaceable news coverage available to everybody, free of charge. Here's how to donate, and thank you.
Visit WAER.org to get started today.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
Syracuse men's lacrosse had arguably maybe Gary Gates' best weekend ever as head coach.
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
The voice of Syracuse men's lacrosse and Syracuse women's basketball as well. Tim Leonard, Javon Edmonds of Syracuse.com.
Check out weekly episodes and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jesse Thorne. On Bullseye this week, we're doing something a little different. We're going to play back some of my favorite conversations with the members of Monty Python's Flying Circus, including Eric Idle.
And we weren't very good at endings. Holy Grail stopped with the police coming in and arresting everybody, which my daughter says is the worst ending of a film anywhere.
Plus Terry Jones, John Cleese, and Terry Gilliam on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
There are a lot of things you can do with a knife. Some slow, some fast, some even with a twist. And on the next Snap Judgment, we're going to dance on the razor's edge. Snap Judgment proudly presents The Cut. Do not miss it.
Sunday morning at 10 on 88.3 FM WAER.
To the hoop, finds Starling, throws a floater up to Soiree, and he delivers the slam. Great ball movement by the Orange. Starling to Soiree.
Great ball movement, something you don't hear a lot in the Syracuse men's basketball season. Well, good news, it's finally over. 86-69, the final score. They bow out to SMU in round one of the ACC tournament. SMU, the 11 seed, goes on to play Louisville. Syracuse comes back to the Salt City to nicer weather, to say the least. We know that because Nico Horning and myself, Josh Sokolsky, are here in the 315. We watched this game. We've broken it down for the past, what has it been, like an hour and 20 minutes. So now it's time to wrap up shop. One final time, Nico and I both are seniors here at WAER, which means after basketball season's over, we are done. We have no more basketball broadcast to do, and our engineer, Jared Valentin, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, of course, the two guys on the call, Gino Antamarino, Hudson Ridley, so many people in the class of 26. But it's time to really put a bow on what's been really an embarrassing 4 years that we've been here, but specifically an embarrassing final year in which Syracuse goes 15-17 overall, back-to-back losing seasons for the first time since the 60s, since the Richard Nixon administration. So there's a lot to say. There's a lot of emotions to bottle up. We're going to attempt to do that within the next 8 minutes. Nico, we'll start with you. What are your final words of the season?
Well, I think there's a couple ways to look at this. First of all, a lot of the blame I don't think can be on Adrian Autry. You look at the changing landscape of NIL, the way college athletics are played, and not all the blame could fall on the head coach because you have so many variables that you can't control. And I think, Autry's probably gone. That's all set in stone, except it's not confirmed. But that's one thing that's taken care of. What's not taken care of is how is this program, university as a whole, going to get back to having a solid basketball team? And I don't see that happening anytime soon unless there are some big changes in terms of the budget, how much is spent on players, the attraction that players are going to have to come play in Syracuse, because that attraction was Jim Boeheim, and you don't have that attraction anymore. I'm sure there are some guys that would come if there was a certain coach in the area, but I don't see that happening. And so it's going to take more than just a coaching change to get this team back to relevancy, starting with money. And I hate to say it, and I hate the way that college athletics are nowadays with, you can't build a guy for a few years and then have one or two good seasons during their campaign. And so things have changed for better or for worse, in my opinion, for worse. And I think it starts at the top. And so my final word is that there's got to be some more money spent on players. Where does that come from? That's for the university to decide, and for whoever the new athletic director is to decide. But it has to get done, or else Syracuse is going to lose their basketball fandom, and it's going to slowly dwindle down. And I don't think anyone wants to see that happen.
That's a pretty pessimistic take, I'd say, Nico. I mean, the season is over, and I get it. A lot of losing, a lot more losing than winning. And you're right, in this NIL era, it's going to be a lot of dopamine hits that teams are chasing, a lot of short-term solutions because you can't really guarantee loyalty from players with the transfer portal and with how much money needs to be doled out. But, through all the turmoil and the triumphs and low points of the Adrian Autry era of Syracuse men's basketball this season, a lot of times the bad emotions have come out on these double overtimes. The frustration, the anger, the fear, the hopelessness. But right now, as we sit here at the end of the road, we are at the end of the tunnel and there's a light shining on. I'm feeling strangely happy, Nico. I'm feeling weirdly happy and optimistic about this, right? Because at the very least, change has to happen now. Change has to happen, and it's going to. There already is going to be a new athletic director who has a new philosophy, new ways of handling things, new ways of how do we deal with this NIL issue. I don't think John Wildhack, towards the end of his career, was quite ready for it, and he got ran over like a lot of ADs did. There's no shame in that. But now Syracuse has a chance to reestablish itself, to pick from the litter of a bunch of qualified candidates to become the next athletic director, to become the next head coach of Syracuse. Adrian Autry seems like a great guy. He gave his all to this program. At the end of the day, things just didn't work out, and he's probably out the door. I'm optimistic of who Syracuse can bring in to replace him because there are so many good coaches in college basketball today who can really make an impact on the program and bring it back to what it once was. This is undoubtedly the low point. This is, which means the only place you can go is up. And that's where I think Syracuse is headed. There might be a couple more growing pain years, who knows, but at least there will be some sort of positive outlook, some sort of new thing. And call me crazy, call me a fool, but I'm optimistic about this. I'm optimistic about what the future might hold because change is here, it's coming, it's going to hurt for a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's like taking your medicine. Syracuse will come out of this a lot stronger than it ever has been. Wow. Wow. I'm feeling a little emotional now, Nico, our last time here. It's been quite the pleasure, despite the downsides of the season, to talk ball at all is a blessing. I'd rather talk about a losing team than not talk ball at all, and I'm glad that I got to do it with you and a bunch of other colleagues here at WAER over my 4 years.
Yeah, it's been fun, and there's plenty of us. Shout out our producer or engineer, Jared Valentin, our producer Alex Burstein. Still got another year here, and no, it's been a great experience. Coming on here and talking shop, trying to improve ourselves. The amount of support that goes into this with a lot of our colleagues here is can't be overstated, and it's been a fun experience.
Right.
So can't say more about that. Obviously, very grateful for my time here at WAER, and feel like I've become a better broadcaster and person because of it.
I do too. Well, we're in the middle of lacrosse season, so if you still love Syracuse athletics, you can turn to our junior class covering Syracuse versus Air Force in Colorado, March 12th. That is this Thursday. Game time's at 5. McClure Remodeling countdown to face-off is at 4:30. A big thank you goes to our professional staff that's helped us out all along, to Chris Bolt, Joe Lee, Cora Thomas, who's been fantastic to us, to the entire staff that's got us on air, to Luke Burgess, our talk staff director, and to everyone who helped out with this show specifically. Alex Burstein, our producer, Jared Valentin, our engineer, we already talked about him, our reporter, Andrew Delapiana, always fun to talk with him, and our desk working hard behind the scenes, Easton Haru, Daniel Herzog of Heat Checks Only fame, and Cadence Kilhoff, who is here in studio, who's been doing everything for the station. Huge thank you to her behind the scenes. One final time, Nico Horning, Jish Sokolsky, on the air on WAER. We just broke down SMU's 86-69 win over Syracuse men's basketball in round 1 of the ACC tournament. Syracuse's season is over, and so too are we. Good night, Syracuse. Have a fantastic and wonderful evening. And to all the students listening, enjoy your spring break.